conservateurs revendiquent
The
que le
Conservatives
agrandit
are demanding that the government expand the capacity to respond to forest fires. We need more resources. We need more resources to do so. Aircraft, firefighters, pilots unions already warned government at all levels of the need for more pilots. So we need a national action plan in order to expand our capacity to respond to these forest fires in the future. While we acknowledge that many of those resources are provincial, the federal government could indeed coordinate that and have more nationally based resources. My shadow minister for emergency preparedness is available to answer those types of questions. Yesterday, I gave a 4-hour speech in order to prevent the inflationary deficit budget put forward by Justin Trudeau that is threatening Canadians' economic security. Since Prime Minister Trudeau introduced his budget, we have received new information. Very, very serious. First of all, the IMF has said that Canada is the country that is most at risk of a crisis of a mortgage default. Second, inflation is still on the rise. This is something the Prime Minister said would never happen. And third, there was an increase in interest rates. There are $2 billion of debt to Canadian families. The debt for Canadian families are bigger than our entire economy. If those people who have big mortgages need to pay an increase of 3 or 4% on their mortgage in the next coming 3 years, we could be seeing a major mortgage default crisis. This is a real risk, and I'm concerned about it. And rather than the current Prime Minister, I'm the one who will have to deal with that catastrophe. The Prime Minister should know that there is a real crisis coming for people who have mortgages. The budget is adding another $60 billion to inflation. That's $2,400 per Canadian family. It doesn't make sense, and it is putting us at risk of a financial crisis. So today, I tell him, Mr. Trudeau, withdraw your budget. Cancel your summer vacation. Get Parliament to work during the summer to redraft the budget. A budget that will eliminate deficit in order to bring inflation and interest rates down. And cancel all tax hikes that you intend to put on the shoulders of Canadians. We, the Conservatives, are ready to work throughout the summer to rewrite the budget, to create a new budget that will eliminate the deficit and that will cancel all tax hikes. This is not a partisan issue. We need to put partisan considerations aside and work together to avoid this serious crisis that is coming for people who have mortgages. Cancel the budget, cancel vacation, and work to reestablish a responsible budget that will protect households and the financial future of our citizens. That is what we are demanding today as a Conservative Party. We will continue to work to prevent those $60 billion of inflation in the Senate, in the House, and everywhere.
First of all, our thoughts are with the people suffering from the forest fires across the country. Conservatives are calling for a stronger federal coordination and action plan to respond to these types of fires. We believe that the federal government can do more to coordinate provincial assets, to have more federal assets, and to have better reaction the next time a fire like this happens. And I have here with me my Shadow Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Dane Lloyd, to answer more questions on our call on the government in that regard. Yesterday, I spoke for 4 hours to stop the inflationary tax hiking Trudeau budget. Now, I did this not just because I disagree with the irresponsible overspending that has caused the inflation. I've long believed that. But because I believe we're headed to a very serious crisis. Since the Prime Minister introduced his budget, there have been 3 major developments. One, the International Monetary Fund has identified Canada as the country most at risk of a mortgage meltdown because we have the biggest household debt of any country in the G7, $2 trillion of household debt. In fact, our households have as much debt as the entire GDP combined. Second, inflation is now again on the rise, something the Prime Minister promised was not going to happen. He claimed inflation was just going to fall. Now it's rising. A surprise, when you pour tens of billions of dollars more of spending into the economy, you get more inflation. And third, the unexpected increase in interest rates that is going to be another uppercut to overly indebted Canadians who already can't afford their bills. I want you to think about this for a second. If you have a family that's paying $3,000 a month on mortgages, and they experience what the Bank of Canada projects will be a 40% increase in their monthly mortgage payment, that's $1,300 a month, which is almost $15,000 a year, when half of our households don't even have $200 left in their bank account. What is going to happen over the next 3 years as all of these mega mortgages renew at these higher rates? We're going to have defaults. We're going to have mass fire sales of homes as people can't make their payment, and all they can do is put their house in the market, but there won't be anyone to buy them because no one else can afford to pay the rates either. This could be a major financial meltdown. This is not me saying it. It's the IMF. It's the Bank of Canada. And the Prime Minister has to recognize these facts have changed since he introduced his budget. And so I'm calling on him to do the honorable thing, to put aside his pride and his personal ego and cancel this budget. And he should also cancel his summer vacation. Conservatives are prepared to work all summer long to rewrite a budget that balances budgets in order to bring down inflation and interest rates, and that cancels all increases in taxes because Canadians cannot afford to pay more. Mr. Trudeau, people's homes, their livelihoods are more important than your political posturing. They're more important than your summer vacation. So join with us. Put partisanship aside. Let's cancel the vacations. Let's cancel the $60 billion or $4,200 per family in inflationary spending. And let's get to work in this House to save the houses of those Canadians who are up to their eyeballs of debt after 8 years of your government. It is the responsible thing to do. I'm going to inherit this mess as Prime Minister, but I'm going to do everything I can as Leader of the Opposition to mitigate it and make sure that we save the homes, and the financial future of our people. It's the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Let's bring it home.
Excusez-moi, je pensais que vous aviez fini. Oui. Sur le projet de loi budgétaire, il va passer
on the budget bill will be passed this afternoon. What can you or will you do? We will prevent the inflationary and irresponsible budget of Prime Minister Trudeau in the Senate. We've worked as much as possible to try and prevent that $60 billion of inflation and to save homes and Canadians' finances. But it's not a majority, sir. You're going to do other things in the Senate? We will use all tools.
You talked a bit about some ideas you had on climate change. And I wonder, what would the ultimate climate-related goal of a conservative climate policy look like under your government? Would it be emissions targets? What would be the climate-specific goal that you'd be after? Well,
our goal is to reduce emissions, but we have an inverse approach to the Liberals. They believe in raising the cost of traditional energy we still need. I believe in lowering the cost of carbon-free energy that we want. So let's bring down the cost of hydroelectricity, nuclear power, carbon capture and storage, tidal power, and other green forms of electricity. How do we do that? We have to green light green projects. They had a wonderful tidal power project in Nova Scotia, private sector driven. The company threw up its hands and left because it was 6 years waiting for Fisheries and Oceans to give them a sign-off. A Poilievre government would remove the gatekeepers and green light these green projects. We need to speed up the approval of small modular nuclear reactors. Look, we have to protect safety, but does it take 15 years? What are we going to learn in years 13, 14, and 15 of a study that we can't learn in years 1, 2, and 3? So Trudeau is saying he wants Saskatchewan, Alberta, and New Brunswick to shut down coal. Okay, fine, but replace it with what? If he's not going to green light nuclear power, then how are they going to do that? In Quebec, they need a 100% increase in their electricity grid. But how are they going to do that if the federal government holds up hydroelectric dams for 7 to 8, 9 years? I would respect Quebec's environmental process and not duplicate it so that we can speed up hydroelectric dam construction. So in other words, let's lower the cost of carbon-free alternatives rather than raising the costs of traditional energy on which Canadians still rely.
Allez-vous voter en faveur de la motion du Bloc qui demande...
You're going to vote in favor of the Bloc's motion demanding to invest in fossil fuels? We will read the motion and listen to the debate. I haven't yet been able to review it because I was busy yesterday evening. Generally, I think that we need to let the free market determine investments. I am fully for and in favor of our oil sector in Western Canada. It's a great sector that is financing our social services. But I don't want to promote grants and subsidies for just any sector and any product, depending on what they offer.
Flag raising on the Hill today. Sorry, you were not at the Pride flag raising on the Hill today. Why was that?
I was working last night until midnight fighting against inflation and interest rate hikes. And that was my focus, and that's going to continue to be my focus.
Is that against you?
Are you acknowledging now this thought of you wanting to work all summer long in the House of Commons? Is this an acknowledgement that your demands on the government and your filibuster-type speech last night was not successful?
It was very successful in appealing to the common sense of the common people. Unfortunately, we don't have a prime minister with a lot of common sense. So, I'm going to continue to work on convincing Justin Trudeau that you can't pour $60 billion of new inflationary spending on an economy that already has high inflation and interest rates, but rather we need a plan to balance the budget, to bring down inflation and interest rates, and to end all of his plans for tax increases. Two very simple demands. Now, the Prime Minister needs to cancel his vacation. I know he loves to vacation. He's probably the Prime Minister most in love with vacations of any Prime Minister we've ever had. In fact, I'm going to be making a contact with the Guinness Book of World Records to find out if there's any other politician in the history of the world who has vacationed as much as him. But could he not cancel his summer vacation to fight the inflation that he has caused in our country? Could he not put the mortgage payments of ordinary Canadians ahead of his tan or his surfing lessons? I think he could, and that's why we're saying, Justin Trudeau, cancel the surfing, get back to work, get into this House so that we can save the houses of hardworking Canadians by bringing down inflation and interest rates.
Last question. For the trans community, public safety is a central pillar of what you're trying to campaign on. So what do you make of the increased hostility and threats the trans community is facing right now in Pride Month?
I believe every Canadian, regardless of who they are, regardless of their race, sexuality, gender, deserves to be safe. And that if anybody commits violence against any other Canadian, then they should be thrown in the slammer. We should have serious consequences for violence committed against any person, regardless of who that person is, regardless of the motive of the crime. And that's why we have to do away with Trudeau's catch and release system, which allows repeat violent reoffenders back out on the street to do harm to other people. That does not make sense. I'll bring in a common sense criminal justice reform that will protect every single Canadian. Let's bring home safety. Thank you very much.